So good afternoon, everyone. It's good to be here with you today. And thank you, Cynthia, for the opportunity to have this talk. My name is Athena Morgan. I am the Regional Project Manager for the International Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And we are doing several projects in Africa relating to online abuse of children, online sexual exploitation, missing and trafficking of children as a result of their online interaction. However, the reason we are having this talk today is to look at the digital rights of a child during this digital era. And I am a lawyer by profession, but I prefer being the kind of lawyer who does not talk a lot of legal jargons, but in a simple and easy to understand way, we're going to go through a bit of the presentation. And please feel free to ask a question in the chat if you have any, or even raise your hand or interject at any point. I will be willing to interact with all of you as we proceed. So I think those are the basic ice-breaking ground rules. And the first thing we're going to look at is the laws that exist. And laws do not exist in a vacuum, meaning that they can not exist unless there are people who are there to carry them out. When we look at the legal rights of a child, in the Kenyan context, they are provided for mainly under the Constitution, the Children's Act, and the Data Protections Act when it comes to digital rights. But also, you see, I have mentioned the United Nations Convention on the Rights of a Child. And I have a few legal friends who say that this is the children's Bible, meaning that it provides a roadmap to all that is when it comes to dealing with children. And if you look at all the other acts and laws that are created, they have been derived from the basic provisions that are provided under the UNCRC, which is the Convention on the Rights of the Child. So I'll go through each of these laws in brief, but I will not break down the sections, but I will point out to you the most important areas. And the first area that we're going to look at is the best interest of a child. How many have ever come across the principle of the best interest of a child? I don't like talking by myself, so I like having an engaging audience. So anyone who's aware of what the best interest of a child means, you can just put it on the chat or even unmute and let me know. What's the best interest of a child? Or Cynthia, you can help your people?
Okay, I'd say when you talk of I think
Yes?
someone is going.
Yeah, there's someone else going.
Uko salama? Uko Mombasa ama Nairobi?
Ah,
Huu mtembea amekuja Mombasa ni yupi?
that one is not with us. Okay. Cynthia?
Okay, so I was saying when we talk of the best interest of the child, it's children, remember, they are minors, and these are people who are dependable on us as adults. So when you have to consider the best interest of a child, then we look at it from a point of a reasonable person. Is this best for this child? Is this the right thing to do when it comes to the interest of a child and their well-being generally? So it looks at the welfare. It could be the physical well-being, the mental well-being, the health well-being, and generally basic rights of a child that we should actually look out for them, educate them, give them the right information and all that. That is the best, I would say, the best interest of a child would refer to.
Thank you, Cynthia, and that is very accurate. Best interest of a child looks at what serves the child best at the situation that they're in at the given moment. So, for example, if you take a photo of your child today when they're having an embarrassing moment, yeah, and most parents have a habit of doing that. So if your child goes and applies all the Vaseline, or your child messes themselves up in one way or another, and then you take a photo of it because you as the parent think it's funny, and then you upload it online. This is something for you to think about. Does that serve the best interest of the child? You will laugh about it. Your friend will probably laugh about it. But would this child, had they had the knowledge of what they were doing, would they have been comfortable with that image of themselves being online? Think about it, and you can feel free to put your thoughts in the chat once again. The purpose of this discussion today is to provoke you into thinking outside what we normally think and act when it comes to the digital age, because most of the time we'll find that even as adults, we tend to do things that may not serve the best interest of our children. So think about that and let me know what you think, if that situation will serve your child even in the future when they come across that photo, or if someone else, a bully or someone who has it against your child, comes across that photo. What do you think would happen? Would your child still be comfortable, and would you say that photo serves the child's best interest? And another example we can think of still when you're talking about best interest of a child is recently during the COVID pandemic, there were situations in which we found that parents were selling actually because it was selling, saying that they were incapable as a parent to take care of their child or provide for their basic needs. So marrying off their girls would help them get food, shelter, clothing from this rich man. Again, my question, and please, I want to hear your thoughts and opinions. Let me know if that serves the best interest of the girl child. Is it okay, for example, to sell a 10-year-old girl to a rich man because you as a family cannot be able to take care of the needs, best interest of a child? So food for thought. Then the other thing when we are looking at data protection is parental guidance. And parental guidance is very key. It's been highlighted both in the Children's Act, it has also been highlighted in the convention. And parental guidance is given by a parent or a guardian the moment a child comes into this world. And when it comes to the digital age, most of the time who exposes our children to technology, it is the parent. So it is you as a parent who's gonna buy the phone for your child, or introduce them to cartoons on the television and the computers, the laptops and all that. So as a parent, how do you guide your child when you introduce them to technology? Do you just give them a phone and tell them, okay, here you go. Cynthia, here's a phone, you figure it out. Or do you sit down with them and tell them that they have both a right and a responsibility when they're online? They have the right to their own privacy, they have right to access of information, but they also have a responsibility to protect themselves and protect the people that they're engaging with online. So parental guidance is very important, and it also depends on the maturity rate of a child or the maturity level of a child. You cannot talk to a 5-year-old probably about, let's say, pornography or sexual innuendos that commonly pop up when someone is online, simply because the child has probably not seen this information and you are giving them information that is above their age. But there is a 5-year-old child who could have seen this information or this content somewhere, and they come and ask you as a parent, what would you do? When they're online on YouTube, most of our devices, we get pop-ups, and sometimes these pop-ups are not very child-friendly. So if your child comes to you with a question about content that they have seen, what would your reaction be, for example? If it is content that is adult-rated content. Anyone? If your 5 or 6-year-old child comes to you and asks you about it, what would you say? Or even they come and show you the video, like, mommy, daddy, look at what this video is doing. What would you do as a parent? Anyone? I know it's a tricky one, but it does happen and it has happened. So if you put yourself in that shoe, what would you do? under parental guidance.
Okay, let me make a contribution. I'd say in normal circumstances, it point that we have to have the conversations with our children. And if it has happened in a circumstance that you didn't expect, then I believe it's the time to have that conversation, talk to your child, tell them this is adult content, and advise them on the way forward. Then we'll learn through that process, because without us having that conversation, then we will never learn, or the children themselves will never learn. So it's a time to give guidance on the same. Yeah.
Thank you, Cynthia. Patricia?
I would say it is unfortunate that as parents, we tend to, in quotes, protect our children. Yet the truth is that a majority of them, and mainly the teen and the young adults, they are getting exposed to this. And unfortunately, even the very young ones who are still below teens, they are getting exposed. So the first thing I would say is that you want to gauge the age of that child to see if they will comprehend the kind of a intimate conversation you would want to have with them in regard to that particular subject. Then, for example, if it is pornography material, it would be wrong for a parent to say, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad. What is bad? Adults having sex, or adults having sex and displaying it for public view. All right. So we because when you tell them then sex is bad, when it is time to tell them sex is good, but this way and this way, at what point will you discharge the sex is bad and engage sex is good? Because sex is not bad, but done at the right time with the right person, it is right. So the thing is, as parents, we need to be prepared at all time to know that at any time you will be required to step in and then have intimate, and I insist on intimate, conversations with your children. So as they grow, you need to know at what stage of life are they, what conversation do I need to have with them. And even before they come up with them, some will innocently come up with it to you. Others will see it and hide it because ni tabia mbaya, it is bad manners. So they will, but because it excites them, they will continue to watch it in privacy without knowing the long-term negative impact it is going to have on the good effect it is supposed to have in the future. So even when you don't know they are watching, they have either brought it, they have not brought it, be intentional about having this intimate conversation along the path of growth.
Thank you very much, Patricia, for that very concise answer. And I do agree with you 100%. And one of the common things that we've come across, even as I do trainings on online protection, is when you ask a parent, or we call them the typical African parent, what they will do when a child comes to them with any kind of content that they consider not good, or they consider a taboo. What you do, probably you'd slap your child and you're like, why are you watching this? You're tabia mbaya, you know, as Patricia has pointed out. But remember this, the generation that we are in right now, the children that we are raising, are very different from even my generation and even the people who are 20 years right now, because before you couldn't get information anywhere. Right now, a child will come and ask you, Mom, I came across the word sex. What does it mean? So it's a responsibility as a parent to guide your child and explain it to them. You don't have to go into details about it, but just give them a satisfactory answer based on their maturity level. Because if you don't, there are two things that would happen. Your child would probably go take a phone and Google it. And unfortunately, this is something you can or cannot try, depending. But if you take your phone and Google sex or sexual intercourse, the first thing that will pop up is not the scientific definition of it. It's the pornography sites that will pop up, which is very unfortunate, because we should also have sites that are able to educate children without probably corrupting their brains. But well, this is Google and it's the new age internet as it is right now. But for most instances, when a child goes online and Googles sex or sexual intercourse, what they'll be told is click on the XX videos to see, you know, and get some very weird suggestions. So imagine as a parent, you slapped your child and told them to go away. That has not satisfied the child. They still have a question that needs answering. So they'll either go online to check it, The other alternative is they'll go to someone else. They'll go to the neighbor who they normally talk to, probably, and ask what is sex. And maybe this neighbor does not have the child's best interest at heart. And instead of explaining it to them, they'd be like, come, I show you. So as a parent, you will have failed in your responsibility of offering parental guidance because you did not consider the best interest of a child in this digital era, whereby they will be exposed to content, whether we like it or not. But now we have the biggest responsibility to be able to guide them. Otherwise, they might get guidance from elsewhere, and the guidance that they get will probably lead them down a very scary, confusing road that we would not wish upon our children. So I hope you're getting that parental guidance is key. Sometimes as parents, you might find it difficult to talk to your child. You can always find someone else to, someone you trust. I can talk to an older sister to talk to a younger child if I am uncomfortable having that conversation. Although it is tricky, we always have to find a balance, because if you do not, then you fail in your responsibility of parental guidance, and that means that your child is going to get exposed, and most probably to content that will be detrimental to them. As we proceed on the data of children, we're going to look at consent. And consent means that a person has agreed for their information to be used in one way or another. Under the Data Protection Act, consent is normally given for a child. Consent is given by the parent. For example, if you walk into a hospital, if you go into a school setting whereby the child's information is needed, as a parent, you're the one who gives consent for this information to be used, which I'd like to call, we have two types of areas where you can give consent. There's the one where you can give consent for information to be used for purposes that are beneficial to your child. For example, in hospitals, in schools, in a conference, in a seminar where you have to register your child and give personal information about this child. And then we have the other section where consent is needed on social media platforms. Did you know that social media platforms have age restrictions for children? So for example, you might say that, last I checked, I think YouTube, the youngest you could join is if you're 13 or was it 16? But most of the social media platforms have an age restriction. So you as a parent, when you're introducing your child to technology, do you let them sign in with their actual date of birth, or do you let them use a fake one? And if you say you don't know, then probably there you're failing in your responsibility as a parent in parental guidance, because once you introduce technology, you're the one who's supposed to guide your child during the digital journey of getting introduced to social media platforms and all other online platforms. And most parents would say, oh, we are not .com parents, we are old school, we are not aware of this. So if you're not aware, then the question becomes, who is aware and who is going to be the one guiding your children? Also, there is the issue of signing in personal information still on the social media platforms, whereby your child gives too much information about themselves. Do you have intentional conversations with your children about what information should be shared and what information should not be shared? What information is too much? Again, consent on personal information, even offline right now. As a parent, I have my child going to a certain school. I will take a picture of them and post it on my Facebook page. The picture shows my child, their school uniform with a school logo. Probably down there, I will write the full name of my child, their class, and the name of their class teacher. Do you think that is the right thing to do as a parent? And when you say, okay, you'll say, I am the parent, I am okay giving this information about my child. But do you think you're protecting your child when you do such or when you post such content online? Anyone? And if not, why? And if so, why also? You take a full picture of your child in school uniform, school logo visible, you write their full name, their class, their class teacher's name, their best friend's name, and you write down their hashtag, very proud of my son. Is that a good thing or a bad thing as a parent?
Come again with the question.
I have said you take a picture as a parent, you take a picture of your child in full school uniform and you post it online. And then you put a caption, you write your child's full name, their class teacher's name, the class they're in, and then hashtag I'm very proud of my child, or I'm very proud of my son. You'll say as a parent, I am the one who has responsibility over my child and this is my Facebook page, so it's okay. But do you think that is the right thing to do? Yes or no, and why?
Hi, my name is Daphne.
Hi, Daphne.
I do not think this is right, mainly because this exposes your child to a lot of people. And among the people you're posting to about your child, they can come to their child's school and they can claim a whole lot of things. They can say that you've given consent for them to pick your child from that school. And because you've posted all the details of your child online, this person can use those details to get your child out of school or to do anything to your child. So I really don't think anyone should be posting their children online, and especially when they include the details of that child. It may be your page, you may be in charge of that child, but it is not in the best interest of your child to post them online together with their details. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Daphne. And I agree with you because most of the time we will find that you will have 10 to 20 or 30 friends that you know personally on any social media platform. And the rest are just friends of friends and friends of friends that you may never even know who they really are. So in the first instance, you might be trying to say that you're proud of your child and posting them online and saying, as the parent, it is your role or you're the one who's in charge, but you don't know who is accessing this information. And we know in the digital era, children are being ransomed, children are being abducted. And most of this time, nowadays, you don't have, it's no longer the teddy bear and pin pop era. You know, the teddy bear and pin pop era is where an abductor would wait outside a school, and when a child is walking, it's like, hey, come, I give you a pin pop, let's take a walk. Or here's a teddy bear, let's take a walk, and the child will follow. We are no longer in that era, we're in a digital era whereby the more information you post about your child, the more information you give to any person who might have malicious intentions towards them, making it easier for them to be able to access your child. So now that is your role as a parent. You're not supposed to overexpose your child. You talk to your teenagers about what they post, yeah? Because you find that they're teenagers or even young adults who will constantly post where they go every Saturday and like clockwork, you know, they will post the house they're in. They will want to show that they live in a posh home, so they'll take photos of their sitting rooms and display their 100-inch TVs if they're such, and the expensive couches and your parents' Lamborghini and all that. I'm exaggerating, but you get the point, yeah? And this child will post all this information online and they're like, we live in Kileleshwa or we live in Kitusuru, you know, these suburban areas that people want to live in. But do they know that they're exposing themselves and they're exposing their family, for example, to harm? Because if I am a friend online and I have malicious intentions, I know now that Daphne has a big screen TV, and I know every Saturday the family goes out to a certain mall, let's say the Hub, between 8 and 3 p.m. So I know between 8 and 3, the house is empty. There's no one there. And the reason I know this is because your child is constantly posting these things online, which makes it easier for me to plan with my cronies how we're going to come and rob your house. So in this digital age, we want to show off, children want to show off, parents want to show off, but do we really know the repercussions of our actions when we are online? And that is when the issue of parental consent comes in. Yes, you can give consent, but to what extent? A child can also give consent once they go online, but to what extent is Are they allowed to give personal information? Do they know how much information is too much? Do they know what they should say yes to and what they should say no to? And this information they can only get through you as a parent or through active engagement in conversations and talks around digital rights, digital privacies, and digital responsibilities, which are being offered daily, and you can even find them online if you are really interested. So my advice would be make sure that yourself and your child are digitally literate to prevent yourselves from getting into a situation which you would have not wanted yourself to be in. So consent is important. Yes, it is. But to what extent? And as I said, I don't want to go so much into the law because we do have good laws. We have laws that say that, oh, if you're found guilty of cyberbullying, you will be imprisoned for 20 years. Yeah. But why wait to get to that point, yet you can prevent your child from being bullied at this moment, you know? You can prevent your child from being bullied in future by not sharing embarrassing photos of them right now. So knowing the law is one thing, but having digital etiquette and being a responsible digital citizen is what makes these laws effective. And to be a responsible digital citizen, you need to know your roles and your responsibility on the online platform and the responsibility that you have towards your children in order to protect them and to protect their rights when they are online. So as we move on, we will be looking at the balance between the right to privacy and access of information. In law, there is a famous saying that is the saying that your rights end where mine begin, which means that I may have the freedom of expression, for example, but the moment that my freedom of expression becomes hurtful to another person, then that right is supposed to stop there. For example, I can say anything that I want to say online as long as I do not end up insulting Cynthia, for example, because her right when she's online is to also enjoy her peace, her comfort, and whatever joys she derives online, yeah? So if my right to expression is in a way hurting Cynthia's right to freedom of access of information or to her right of privacy, then my rights end there. I hope you're getting. So it is a delicate balance between what you can and what you cannot do online. You can express yourself, you can access information, but as long as the information that you're accessing, the information that you're posting, does not cause harm or detriment to the other person who is also on the virtual platform, because it's a virtual world now. Everyone is online most of the time. So we have a responsibility to be able to balance our rights and the rights of others. And when we're looking at the right to privacy in this instance, during COVID, again, we started online classes, and some teachers required students to put their videos on the entire time. Others were required to have their full name on the screen all the time. They were expected to comment and write their thoughts and opinions, and it was literally like an actual classroom, just that it was on the virtual platform. And I am sure if we were keen enough, we had a few instances where these virtual classrooms had been hacked, and you find that the most common one was pornography being shared common screen through the common screen, or you find that personal information was got during virtual classroom sessions. So the question becomes, how can you as a school or as the provider of this service ensure that your children or whoever is accessing this information is safe? That would be a Zoom challenge, not your challenge yourself, but in your virtual classroom, people don't have probably to put their full name or constantly be on full video, though children are cheeky and they can seem to switch between paying attention and not. But the question is, what if this child is embarrassed or they are in a home setting that is not as appealing, and you want them to stay virtually on the entire time. Maybe they're taking care, they're outside sitting in the grass, because they can't sit inside the house, they don't have sufficient space. What happens to this child if the video is on the entire time? You find that they can get bullied or called names by their classmates. So even as an educator, during virtual sessions, I think it is very important for schools to be able to talk to children about online etiquette and digital courtesy, so that regardless of the situation in which a child finds themselves in, they do not find that their right to privacy has been violated for one reason or another, or they find themselves falling victims of bullying or other kinds of online exploitation, basically due to the situation that they're in at the moment. And we also have the issue of entertainment, which we have touched on a little bit. And we know that movies, videos, music, and all that, children are watching them online. And that also brings up the issue of privacy. There are some movie sites that you cannot access without giving up too much personal information. So do you talk to your children about the issue of using legitimate sites? The legitimate sites, do they know that when a site asks for what kind of information, that is deemed as too much information and might be detrimental to them or to their family, So when a child is interacting with the online platform, they need to be aware of their right to privacy, as well as the fact that they might need to access the information, but it should not be at the cost of their right to privacy or the right to privacy of their family. Because some ask for bank account details. Obviously, a child doesn't have bank account details, so they will have to give the parents bank account details. Which means the parents are the ones who are likely to fall victims of fraud. So even in the quest for entertainment, especially on the online platform where there is a lot of pirating and illegal sites, our children need to be aware that they have the right to access information, but not at the expense of their right to privacy. And the same applies to research. Before they sign up for any research, or even as they're looking for information to deal with the school, to do with school-related activities, they need to know what sites they need to trust and which sites they cannot trust. And one of the most common things that is an indicator of a reliable site is the HTTPS. So if you are looking for a site and it's http www.something.com, then if it doesn't have the S after the HTTP, then it means that that site is not secure. So the S in the HTTPS usually means that in most instances, that site is secure and you can continue with your research. But if it doesn't have the S, then that means approach with caution. These are some of the digital skills that your children should be aware of, that you should be aware of as you're navigating the online platform, because we need it for entertainment, we need it for research, and we need it for academic reasons and purposes. I hope you're clear until now. Do you have any questions? Okay. So we shall look briefly at the obligation of data controllers and data processors. And I had mentioned this in brief with regard to persons who have been authorized by the law to collect information about children or even adults. And there are those who will use this information for a specific reason. So for example, if you go to hospital and the hospital asks you for the name, the date, the age, and other personal information about your child, and they say that is specifically for helping determine what medication they should get or what treatment they should get, the hospital is not supposed to use that information again and give it to an insurance company so that this company can come and sell you an insurance policy. That is, goes against the legal compliance and the excuse me, and the obligations of the data controllers and processors as per the law. So as a parent, when it comes to protecting your child's personal details, you should be able to know that the law does have provisions that protect the information that you give about your child, meaning that if you find your school has used your child's information, for example, to give it to a third party, which is maybe related or not related to your school. Let me just continue using the example of insurance company. The school is not supposed to give your child's information to an insurance company so that the insurance company can follow up with you so that you can get a policy for your child's education. That is against the legal responsibility or mandate based on the agreement that you signed or what the responsibility of the school is. So as a parent, you can find legal recourse if this ever happens to you. Then once this information has been utilized for the purpose that it is supposed to have been utilized, and it is no longer relevant to the organization that has picked it up, then there is the issue of data anonymization, whereby they just either scrap it off altogether or they remove the personal information that is no longer relevant to the cause that they are seeking. Okay. Encryption just means sending messages or transferring information in a manner that ensures that a third person cannot be able to read the content of it. For example, WhatsApp constantly tells you that this service is protected by end-to-end encryption. What does it mean? It means if I text Daphne, for example, even WhatsApp themselves are not able to see that message that I have sent because it is encrypted and in a private conversation. And this encryption is both good and bad. Let me just stray a little bit because you'll find that children are being abused on encrypted sites like WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, and other private texting services. And they cannot be flagged off simply because of the encryption policy, meaning no one else can be able to see now unless you share the information in a group and then someone reports it. So when it comes to investigation of abuse against a child, encryption sometimes is a setback because it prevents the investigators from finding out if a child is actually being abused or not. So, but back to the issue of data controllers and processors, they have the responsibility, if they are to transfer information that you have given to them, to ensure that information is encrypted, to prevent it from being accessed by unauthorized parties. And finally, privacy by design simply means that whatever system that is coming up, if you're planning to get information, personal information about individuals, you should ensure that your means of collection, your means of storage, your means of transfer of this information offers privacy from the onset and not as a second thought after you've collected information. You're like, oh, I was supposed to make sure this information is private, so let me look for a way to privatize it. And already the information is out there and easily accessible to the third parties or anyone else who wants to access it. So when it comes to obligations of data controllers and data processors, we've seen that we have a legal recourse whenever you feel that your information has been misused or used for a purpose that it was not intended to, and that includes also for a child. If you have given out the information and you find it elsewhere, you could always question where it has come from, especially if you have the knowledge of who it is who shared this private information that was not meant to be shared. You can see time is much spent. I am trying to cover as much as possible and make sure that we can have a feel of what it is exactly that digital rights entail and our role and responsibility when taking care of our children online and even when exposing our children to technology in this digital era. So the final thing I'm going to look at is the issue of collaboration. And this may or may not apply to all of us, depending on the nature of your profession, but we know that online abuse of children, especially on the online platform, is cross-border in nature. That means that a child could be in Kenya, but they're being abused by someone who is in Tanzania or US, and it is very difficult for this information to, it's very difficult for the internet to be tamed, first of all. So international collaboration is very important, especially among governments and law enforcement, to ensure that regardless of where the crime is being committed, the child or the children are able to be kept safe and the perpetrators are able to be brought to book or brought to justice. So this is an issue of law, international law and international relations, but it is important to note that there are organizations that are working to ensure that there is collaboration between different actors in different countries, so that if a crime a crime is committed in one country and the victim is in another country, there is the collaboration so that the child is brought to safety or the child is secured and the perpetrator is brought to justice, regardless of their location on the globe. And that is one of the things that the International Center for Missing and Exploited Children does in terms of awareness creation and best practice, raising best practice awareness across different countries in terms of collaboration, so that we can be able to ensure that children are safe regardless of the country they are based in or the laws of the current or country where the crime is happening or where the perpetrator is. So international collaboration is something we generally will be looking at, even as parents, so that you can know if your child is talking to someone who is not in Kenya, who is probably abusing them, then what recourse do you have? Do you just say, okay, because this is someone in Nigeria, there's nothing I can do about it? But there are avenues whereby you can report online abuse of children, and I am going to share them. And these platforms are not limited to a country. For example, we have the IWF reporting portal, the Internet Watch Foundation. They have a portal in Kenya, and this is the link. You can even just Google IWF in Kenya, and you will find that they have the option of reporting. So you will put the link of the source in which you have seen a crime being committed against a child. And for the IWF, in most cases, it's sexual reporting of sexual abuse of children. So if you upload the link where you've seen this content, it is directed to the local DCI who investigate. The IWF will investigate and then send it back to the country's law enforcement for investigation to happen. So click on the link and just see that there is the option of reporting. You will see that it asks you for the link of the site. So if you've seen a child being abused on Facebook or on an open platform that is online, you can be able to post it up there and the report is going to be followed up. And you can report also anonymously, meaning that you don't have to leave your information. But that is only for sexual abuse material on social media platforms. However, unfortunately for this platform, you cannot report Messenger, WhatsApp, and any other site that is end-to-end encrypted. So it's only for open platforms that can be easily accessed online. Secondly, we have the DCI Anti-Human Trafficking and Child Protection Unit. This unit is based within the Kenya local DCI, and they have a toll-free number, meaning that you can report and you will not be charged airtime to call or bandwidth or whatever it is that you use. So when you call this toll-free number, what happens is that you're able to report whatever crime of any nature that is happening, whether it is online or offline. And you can also do that anonymously. And this information will be used to investigate and probably save a child or help in securing the content that may have been shared online that may be detrimental to a child. Other than that, we have the Communications Authority Computer Incident Response Team, KSAT. This is also local, and you can follow that link to be able to report any online incidences that show abuse of a child or where a child's digital rights are being violated. So be it bullying, be it sexual in nature, you can easily report that and it will be investigated. So as we come to an end, there was a story, a parent whose son was ill. I think it was during COVID time. And what happened is the child's private parts, the boy's private parts, were swollen and he was in a lot of pain. And before the curfew could end, the parents were really worried about what to do to their child. So the father called the doctor and he was told to send pictures of the child's private parts so the doctor can diagnose what the problem was. And what happened is that this parent took a picture, sent it to the doctor. The doctor was able to tell where the problem was and they were scheduled for an appointment. And well, the child got treated. The only problem was this parent had backed up the information on Google Drive, meaning if you upload, which means that after a while, photos back up to the drive. And if the photos back up to the drive, then Google has a system whereby it's automated, where any information that looks like child sexual abuse material, what we commonly call child pornography or nudity, it would flag it off. So this father, the photo was uploaded to his drive, and his account was closed, and he came under investigation for sharing child pornography. My first question would be, do you call that child pornography? Was the father right in taking photos of the child and sending it to the doctor for diagnosis? Anyone? What would you have done?
Hi, Athena. Daphne
Hi.
again.
Yes.
I read about that case, and I think what the father was doing was right because he was trying to get medical help for the child. It was in the best interest of the child.
Okay.
However, I feel like the moment he shared that photo with the doctor, and after the doctor had assessed the photo and made a diagnosis, that photo should have been deleted.
Mm-hmm.
I think the reason why his Google account was closed was that that photo had gone all the way to the drive, had been backed up in the drive. And this is a good thing because these are the measures that Google has taken to protect children from abuse. It is a good measure. However, the use of technology was not anticipated. They never anticipated that such a thing can happen. It was during COVID times, so you can see that these parents really tried, and the only thing that he had to do to get help for his child was to take that photo. I think he was right in doing that. However, I don't think he should have kept the photo.
Okay. Thank you,
Yeah.
Daphne, for your response. I've seen your hand, Patricia. My question would be, so even if they deleted the picture, but if the picture had been intercepted, or maybe the doctor be hacked, or the doctor went home, one of the kids came across this information and shared and reshared, or if the doctor needed to seek a second opinion and sent it to another doctor, how do you control it? Because I also agree with you, it was unnecessary. But again, there is the issue of control. The control leaves your hand the moment you take a picture and you send it on the platform. Yeah. Patricia? Yes, Patricia, you raised your hand.
Hello?
Hello?
My take would, I'm seeing, as our sister there has said, is that it was in the best interest of the child, and probably what was lacking was that digital literacy. There was need probably to pull it down, but the good thing is that at the end of the day, the lesson was sent home because there was an opportunity to express themselves, the parents to express themselves when they came under investigation. So now this takes me to my next concern, that before we can even think, the people who are responsible, we as parents who are responsible of these children as their biological parents, as their guardians, at school, at wherever place we are interacting and engaging with children, how knowledgeable are we about these, the digital space, and how we ought to, the etiquette expected when you are on the digital space? How knowledgeable are we in the first place to be able now to even say we can responsibly and knowledgeably guide our children? How knowledgeable are we?
Okay. So when it comes to the issue of privacy and these social media platforms, or just generally, for example, the services that we use. So you say that Google can access your drive. Basically, not that they will intentionally come and just sift through your drive, but if their technology finds something that is deemed illegal, they can be able to do a search and figure out if you're actually a perpetrator to a specific crime or not. Do you feel that that violates your right of privacy as an individual? Because at the end of the day, if you back up your stuff to Google Drive, it means Google can access to the Google Cloud. It means Google is the one that is in control of that information. If it's the Apple Cloud, then it's the same thing, regardless of whichever cloud or drive you use. It means that the host company can be able to access the information at one point or another in case your account is flagged off. Do you feel like that violates your right of privacy? Anyone?
With regard to that, I really don't think that provider, be it Google or Apple, is violating your right to privacy. When you're creating your Google account, normally
Yes.
there are some things that you accept.
Yes.
You accept the terms and conditions of use of a certain application or other products that are made by that company. So for example, in Google, when you create an account with Google, you will have your Google Drive, you will have your photos, you will have your Chrome account and the like. When you accept the terms and conditions of use of those applications, it means you allow that company to access all of your products or everything that you're doing on that account. The only thing you can do is sometimes on the settings, you can manage how much that company can access from you. So once you accept those terms and conditions, it means you accept the rules and the laws and the regulations that that company has set up. So I really don't think it's an invasion of your privacy, because once they can access your documents, they don't go publishing them elsewhere. And they access them to, for example, to sift through and see whether you have these things, you have child pornography, or you have any other images that are not palatable. So that's the only thing that they use. That's the only thing they do when they access your private stuff that you put up on their accounts. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Daphne. And I really wanted someone to bring up the point of terms and conditions. And this goes back to our issue or our discussion of digital literacy and awareness. When you are accessing any social media platform, any online platform, do you actually take time to accept the cookies, the terms and conditions? Do you read them or do you just say yes? Excuse me. Because some ask you if you want us to use the information and share it to third parties. If you say yes without reading, and then tomorrow you find that that company has shared out your information, you cannot sue them because in the first place you're the one who agreed to them using your information in that manner. So I know terms and conditions, cookie settings, and all that are really tricky, considering there are usually a lot, and most technology companies do a lot of writing so that you can just get tired and say yes to everything, which I think is a way of social engineering. But anyway, that's my thought. But it is really important for you or a consumer of technology, and even for you to tell your children that before they accept terms and conditions, they need to be able to know what it is they're accepting before they accept cookies. Some want your location on a daily basis. Do you accept? Because this information could be used for other purposes. And this is now not just related to the issue of Google Drive and the case we just discussed, but it is in general. We all have to be digitally aware as parents, as guardians, as caregivers, so that we can be able to also educate our children. We have a role, we have a responsibility. And unfortunately, the issue of digital rights and digital privacy cannot be discussed in one conversation, in one sitting. It is too much, but it is our joint responsibility going forward to make ourselves digitally aware so that not only are we able to guide ourselves and our actions, but we can also guide our children. Because remember, if you do not guide your child, someone else will, be it the online platform or other people who are more aware than you but have malicious intentions towards your children. So I have come to the end of my presentation. I have tried to cover as much as I could based on the points that I was given. I hope we've all learned something. And just in case you need assistance from other, when you feel that your child needs help, you can always contact Childline Kenya. 116 is usually a toll-free number where you can report all forms of abuse against a child, still anonymously. So that's 116 for Childline Kenya, and I have found it very effective. There's also the Department of Children's Services, and we also have the Cradle and the Kenya Association of Professional Counselors in case your child has been abused or faced something online that you feel is affecting them. It is also always good to get professional assistance for them. So these are the contacts you can use in case you ever need assistance for your child. And if you want to learn more on sexual exploitation of children, there is a course known as the Agents of Change. It's offered by ICMEC. It's free and it's online. You can do it at your own time. It's self-paced, and you get to learn, including abuse happens online, recruited, how to make your child has been steps to take to recover. It's called Agents of Change. If you just Google it online, you will also be able to see the information and continue teaching it. That is it for me. Thank you very much, and have a lovely afternoon. Thank you, Cynthia, once again for this opportunity.
Thank you, Athena. That was a great presentation and insightful as well, especially the discussion on is Google violating our privacy by accessing our information? We back up a lot of our information on Google Drive. So how much information do we give them? And maybe that's a food for thought for all of us. So we are moving on to the second session of the presentation. And I'm going to share my screen just in a moment, because what we've covered, that was our first part of the presentation on the rights-based approach on protecting children online. But then we have a group of, we have this other aspect of protecting data that we share with other institutions, let's say data controllers and data processors. And this is data belonging to minors, children, they are vulnerable. So how should these institutions comply? Athena, kindly let me reclaim the host privileges. Okay, thank you. So I'm going to share my screen in a moment. Is it up?
Yes,
Yes.
it is.
So we've talked about a legal backdrop on data protection for children and privacy, and we've covered the UNCRC. We've talked about the Children's Act and the best interest of the child, and we've also heard from Athena on what the Data Protection Act talks about. But then maybe I would love to also give more information in relation to how the Act has limited the processing of data that we collect from children, because these are minors. So the legal framework, I'll just go through it briefly. The first one is the United Nations Convention of the Rights of a Child, which is an internationally binding treaty that comprehensively provides for the rights of children. So the children have a right to communicate, they have a right to information as well. And as Athena had alluded to earlier before, we have to balance these rights, and one right should not be infringing on the other right, because a child could be exercising their right to communication, but then at the same time, you feel like as a parent, whatever they're communicating is not proper for their age, then how do you limit this kind of communication? So that takes us to parental control. We hand over devices to children. How do we control what they access, who they communicate with, and all that? Secondly, we have the General Data Protection Regulation, which provides for, it actually also covers on the rights of children and their personal data, that is specifically on privacy and children's personal data. So what the GDPR postulates is that when you are handling data or maybe when you are collecting data from children, then you should communicate in a clear and plain language to children that this is what I'm going to collect from you, and this is the reason. So for instance, we have these are new term, the digital age of consent. Normally we know children under the age of 18, they cannot contract, they cannot give consent in certain circumstances. But then let's look at it from this perspective. This is a digital era, and our children have devices. It could be a phone, a laptop. Then at what age should they consent to be on certain or give their consent in relation to accessing certain platforms? Let's say Facebook, we can talk of Instagram, and all those other social media sites. And for instance, what I know is something like a platform like Facebook states that they don't take any responsibility to anything that happens to your child while they are online or while they are accessing or using their platform, because they have made it clear in their regulations that Facebook is not a social media platform to be accessed by children. But when you look at, let's say, Snapchat, we have Instagram. For them, their digital age of consent, where they can allow an infant, a child to onboard their social media platform, is as from the age of 13. Other countries have 16. So how do we protect those children in that space while they are accessing those platforms? So in that instance, this is also food for thought. I don't know if we have the digital age of consent in Kenya. We'll have a discussion around that. Or what do you think? Do we have one? So moving on, I'd say we also have the Children's Act. We've talked of the best interest of the child, right to privacy. All children have a right to privacy, right to healthcare, right to basic education. And when we talk of right to healthcare and right to basic education, it means these are for the children to access these services. Then it's it is paramount, or let's say it's imperative that at the end of it all, they have to give their information to these institutions that provide the services. Then the question is, how do these institutions ensure that our children's data is safe? For instance, recently we had NEMIS. NEMIS was launched, the National Education Management Information System, and it has information of all children who are school going, and it helps with the transitioning from primary school to secondary school, and even getting to register, or let's say administer services while going through the transition. Then my questions were, did the Ministry of Education conduct a data protection impact assessment before launching this platform? Because not only the children's information that is found on this system, it also has the parents' information that is personal information. And further to its personal identifiable information, it can be traced back to this parent, this child, and what happens in case there's a data breach. So those are some of the questions that, in as much as we are trying to onboard the digital space, then do we have the technical safeguards to ensure that this information is safe? Moving on to the Data Protection Act, it restricts the processing of children's personal data. And Athena talked of parental consent, or consent. Consent must be informed. And as I had earlier stated, is a child under the age of 18, can they give consent? Yes or no? But then we have the issue of digital consent. So we need to really have an extensive discussion about the digital age of consent, parental consent. Where does a parent come in? At what? We have children of tender ages. Are they allowed to onboard certain platforms? So further to the one of the consequential amendments that was as a result of the Data Protection Act was it resulted to an amendment to the Basic Education Act. And because schools have registers that contain personal information, personal data belonging to children, then the schools have been asked to register with the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner. So at the end of it all, when you look at those laws, what they really try to achieve is we have the best interest of the child with that regard. So I mentioned about, I talked of restriction on processing of children's personal data. It goes down to legal compliance, which Athena alluded to earlier. And what do we mean by legal compliance? When you look at the Data Protection Act, it has principles of data protection. It starts maybe from the process of when you collect this data, what are you going to use this data for? So the principle states or speaks to the procedure. Is the data subject informed of why you are collecting this data? Is it lawful? What is the purpose? You see, so that's what the principles of data protection aims to. And when you have these principles, its major its major reason is also to look at have the rights of the data subject protected in a way or another. So we have data subject, but what are the foundational principles of the Data Protection Act? So as a data subject, we have rights. You have a right to access your information. You have a right to be informed why this data is being collected. And for instance, when you're collecting data for children, and you have to communicate to this child that I'm collecting this data, this is the reason. Then it goes without saying that the language you're going to use to communicate to a child so that they sign in or they say that, no, this is too much information or this is sensitive information that I cannot give in, then the language has to align with the age and even be presented in such a way that it is very simple to understand, because without communicating to that child, then I believe they will not be able to make a decision about or on why they are giving that information. So we have the rights of the data subject, and we have around eight of them. I will not really go into the details of that. Then how do you exercise these rights? As a data subject, maybe your information has been collected and they are not conforming, because you might find your name has been recorded in a wrong way, or maybe the data has not been captured in the right way. Then as a data subject, you have a right to request for the same to be amended to reflect what is actually in your credentials. So I would say, which sectors have been affected by the Data Protection Act as we speak? We have healthcare facilities. We take our children for medication when they fall ill. We give birth in hospitals. So healthcare falls under the institutions that process sensitive data, and some could be to a point that it could be confidential, or we can and access to such kind of information is restricted. So healthcare institutions are required to register as data controllers because they handle sensitive personal data. Insurance providers, I believe some of us have signed up to some. It could be CIC, it could be Jubilee, or whichever. But remember, when we sign up for insurance, we have to give sensitive data. If it's medical insurance, the kind of sensitive data could be what kind of underlying condition do you have as an individual? Because this is let's say the reason why they need to cover you. Maybe you need to assess a premium cover. So such information is very sensitive to an extent that it has to be secured. So how are they going to comply and make sure that that information has been safeguarded? Moving on to hospitals, I mean the hospitality industry, these are hotels, the places we go for recreation, to have fun. We use our cards, it could be our credit cards to swipe to make payments. Sometimes we have fun, they take photos. How do they handle such kind of data? And most of the, could I say, most of companies that deal with, what do I call this? Recreational facilities or maybe activities. We travel outside town, when you come back over the weekend, then you took photos, it was fun and we all enjoyed the process. But then you find that the next day you are at work and your confidential information has, not even confidential, your image or photos that were taken during that maybe it was a excursion or something like that, have been shared in social media platform without your consent. How do you go about this? So these are some of the data controllers that in one way or another interact with information that is processed from children. We also have schools, and I've mentioned NEMIS, so I'm not going to go through that once again. So there are steps to comply as a data controller or a processor. When you're processing sensitive information and you're running a website, that means you should, and this is what the Act has made mandatory, you should or must have a privacy policy on your website, especially if, or maybe it's a platform that is, or let's say YouTube Kids, or just an application that mostly is used by children. So how do you ensure that as these children access this website, how safe is their information? So that goes to processing, and you must also make sure that the information that you process at that time is necessary for the needs or the requirements for that to be assessed. Because you might not be, you cannot be requesting for information, credit card information that cannot be provided by a child. So moving on, we have another step of compliance for data controllers is you have a privacy policy. A privacy policy stipulates what data you collect, how you store it, for how long, and what is it going to be used for, and how are we going to dispose this information. So it's important. Opt in, opt out. How do I opt in from these services so that I don't keep receiving maybe promotional or marketing messages? So it goes back to a privacy policy, because it sets the tone and the relationship that you have between you and the data subject. Then when collecting personal or sensitive information from children, then the parents must be notified. You must be asking yourself, how do we notify the parents? So there are applications that enable parental control, and or maybe like Google have something they call Family Link, You can always control the sites your children visit to. You can as well limit what they download, the sites they go to, and all that. So with that, I'd say it will be easy for us to coexist in the digital space and have children safe in that space as well. So moving on, the fourth step will be we should get verifiable consent from parents, because we talked of children might not consent, but then who should give this consent? Mostly it's our parents who consent on behalf of the children, especially on giving out personal information. At some point, you'll realize that parents have their own ground rules on how they carry on activities or the sites that they can have their children visit. So in as much as a platform has its terms and conditions, while there are circumstances under which maybe a platform might infringe on the rights that a parent had. For instance, maybe if we didn't have something in relation to privacy by design. So maybe for a parent, their rule is we should have this app, we should not have this app for you. But then you find that a service provider or a platform has gone way beyond and provided for other services that had not been signed up by the parent. And this is what it means by you honor the rights of the parent, especially in when you are offering sites that are accessible by children, maybe it's to play games or to watch videos or movies, whichever. Fifth, we'll talk of security safeguards. And what are these security safeguards? So as a data controller or a processor or maybe a platform provider, you must ensure that there is security safeguards. Implement reasonable procedures to protect the security of kids and their personal information. So there have been global trends, and I think after the COVID-19 pandemic, we realized that the digital space is a space that in one way or another we are bound to operate from. And some of the recommendations that were provided by the policymakers when it comes to data protection, it's data protection authorities should collaborate globally, publish guidelines, and monitor practice. And as Athena had alluded before, she said that there are those institutions that are meant to, we can reach out to them when it comes to maybe exploitation of children in the online space. When you talk of policymakers should conduct and publish risk assessments, procure UNCRC rights respecting tools. So when you talk of UNCRC rights respecting tools, like as a platform, when they're coming up with their applications or software, they should ensure that they embed privacy by design in their products. Then you have internet service providers. Privacy and data protection by default and design, it's the same statement as I stated before. Then transparency on automated decisions and artificial intelligence. Don't exploit children for commercial gain. And when we were talking about the Google case and the way this was a parent who was acting in good faith, they just sent a photo to the doctor for review and all that. But for Google, they thought this was a child molester or someone who is about to harm or maybe exploit a child. But now these are parents. And because of use of automated decisions and artificial intelligence, these parents could not access their accounts, they could not carry on with their daily activities. But I know it is for the better, it's trying to create a better digital space. And maybe it's also sending a message to us parents. We should not take photos or maybe share certain kind of sensitive images about our children. Then to educators, it could be kindergarten, schools, and all that, all the way to institutions of higher learning. We handle data in one way or another. So you should understand the company business model, then product security. How do you ensure that our information is safe? Because information is an asset. This is what you use to make business decisions, and ensure that you have privacy settings. Yep. Then recommend and use safe and transparent tools. For instance, at Southend, we partner with Kaspersky, And maybe you could be asking yourself, how do I enhance parental controls on my end as a parent? Kaspersky has a product on parental control, which enables you to, when you have the application, it will send you a notification that maybe there's a message that should not be for consumption of your child. It will detect even sites that are malicious and notify you as a parent. So keeping your child safe online, it's not so much work. There are tools that will help us keep children safe. So for the long and short of it, I would say thank you for listening. Any questions are welcomed. And yeah, that was it.
Hi, Cynthia. Thank you for the presentation. With regards to children and their privacy, there is an issue that I've seen lately, and I feel like it's not being addressed enough. And it's the issue of parents creating YouTube channels for their children or Instagram accounts for their children. And some of them post a lot of personal stuff about their kids, not necessarily where they are, where they school, but things that you might consider a little bit private. They go on talking about my child is not eating, my child is not doing homework. So many things that as an adult, sometimes you feel like I really don't need to put this out on social media. But some parents put almost practically everything about their children online. And I feel like at some point when these kids are at the age of 18, do we foresee a situation where these children are suing their parents for infringing on their right to privacy by posting each and everything about their lives on the internet? What is your take on that? Both Cynthia and Athena, I would appreciate your comment.
Is Athena still with us? Okay, so I think Patricia talked of, are we parents aware? Do we know what we are doing? Do we know how to handle a digital space and all that? So I think it still boils down to, as a parent, do they know the dangers? Because some parents mostly operate from a point of ignorance. They don't know. Some don't know the law, but others are doing it for business. So where do we strike the balance? Because until you know about something, like the dangers of exposing your child and oversharing, then you wouldn't know how to protect them. So you cannot protect something that you don't know. So until we make these parents aware that these are the consequences of 1, 2, 3, sharing too much information about your child, maybe in the near future they might, or when they grow up or turn 18, they might not want to have such kind of content about them on social media platforms, because mostly we say the internet never forgets. I don't know how true that is, but I believe we need to create more awareness. That's what I will say. We need to teach parents. But if a parent is doing it for the benefit of making money and all that, then they are doing it at the expense of their child, which is not right, as per me. Yeah, that's what I have to say.
Thank you. I totally